So this is the either or fallacy. Pauline Christianity gives you these two options. They You either go with their toxic view, their wrong view that all humans are depraved, inherited sin, you can't stop sinning, even though that's what Jesus instructed us to do. You can't follow the commandments, even though they're commandments, right? That toxic, like I said, slanderous view of yourself and all of humanity is one extreme. And then they tell you that if you don't believe in that extreme, then you must believe in the other extreme, which is that you think you're God or that you think you're on the same level as Jesus, right? So both are false, right? Both are toxic. There is a correct view, which is neither of those. You don't think humans are depraved, but you don't think you're, divine either. You still recognize you're a human being. It is possible. It is possible to not, it is possible to think that you're a human being who can perfectly follow the commandments of a divine being, right? That is a possibility, and yet Pauline Christianity will never mention that to you because it's propaganda. And again, logical fallacies are always behind destructive ideologies and practices. And propaganda, as in, you could say spiritual or political, any kind of propaganda that's aimed at the public for the intent of disempowerment is what I'm referring to when I say propaganda, toxic propaganda, right? So its main goal is to disempower people, right? So that they can thereby be more powerful in relation to them. So if you're trying to disempower people, that's abusive, right? So propaganda is just a means of doing something abusive, right? And like I said, logical fallacies are always what are utilized in order to deceive people into going along with that abuse. So all propaganda relies on logical fallacies. So this toxic idea that you're this depraved human being and every newborn child is actually an evil creature is delivered, and people buy into it because they're not identifying this logical fallacy, the either or, the false dichotomy. And because they're not identifying it, they're deceived by it and they think, oh yeah, this is just being humble, like they're telling me. But it's not, right? It's just, like I said, the truth is neither that humans are all depraved, nor that, human beings are equivalent to divinity. And it's really sad because I can see sort of the confusion with Christians that I talk to that are very intelligent. And when I point these verses out, that Jesus was clearly pointing to a high standard of ethical thought, word and action, I can see that they're tackling this intellectually, like they're troubled or confused somewhat. Um, and they'll say to me, I hear what you're saying and it makes sense. Like they recognize what I'm saying isn't, you know, gobbledygook. They recognize, okay, he's making a good point here. And then they're trying to reconcile it with the propaganda that they've been indoctrinated with, and they're not really able to reconcile the two. But the way that they defend that propaganda is by repeating the subliminal either or fallacy that hasn't really been brought to the surface. They'll say something like, well, Jesus is king, or Jesus is Lord. I'm not, I'm just a human. And then I'll say, well, of course, I'm not saying that to follow his commandments is to mean that you're equivalent to him. It's just doing what he said in a flawless way, right? And then I'll repeat to them, why would he give us commandments that we can't follow? Wouldn't that be cruel? Imagine a parent telling a child that they can do something that they know they can't actually do, and so the child keeps trying over and over and over again, believing the parent. If someone were to observe that, they would think that the parent was crazy, or that they were cruel, just kind of enjoying watching their kid try and do something that they know they can't do. It's twisted, right? So it's actually blasphemous to say, even though they never say this directly, it's blasphemous to say that Jesus is giving us a commandment that we can't follow, right? Because well, what does that mean? Well, either it either if Jesus is giving us commandments that we can't follow, that means what one of two things, right? It means either he's incorrect, okay, well then you don't think he's a divine being actually, okay, or you think he know like what could be another possibility other than he knows you can't do it. He's divine. He has this knowledge that you can't do it, but he's telling you to do it anyway, and that would be cruel. So either either way you look at it, there's no good way to follow this toxic teaching that you're inherently depraved and can't possibly stop sinning. Jesus said repeatedly to stop sinning, sin no more. He said to have exceedingly high righteousness. He said to obey his commandments, right? So it doesn't make any sense if you believe in Jesus, if you love Jesus, to then say his instruction is impossible to follow. But that's what Pauline teachers say. But they say it indirectly, and they put the focus on yourself and say, well, if you think that you can achieve perfection, you're at fault. They're not going to tell you Jesus is at fault, but they'll tell you you're at fault. You're practicing egomania, right? So it's admittedly a little tricky, but I don't think that much. Like Christians really don't have much of an excuse for following this nonsense. And I hope in pointing out the specific fallacy at play here, the either or, the false dichotomy, will help more Christians wake up and realize that we can do what Jesus called us to. Not saying it's easy, not at all. I continue to fail at the callings to reach the standard that he wants us all to achieve, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. Oftentimes people say, well, who do you know that's done this? Or how do again, it's like this anti-Christ teaching, right? If he's telling us to do something and all you have to do,